let's move on to topic 2, which was the co-main event of UFC 287, which saw Jorge Masvidal suffer a unanimous decision loss to Gilbert Burns and then announce his retirement from MMA. At 38 years old, on a 4-fight losing skid and just a couple months shy of the 20-year anniversary of his MMA debut, I ask you guys, was this the right time for Masvidal to retire from the sport? And how do you see his legacy as he goes out? George, I know you go way back with Mr. Masvidal, so I want you to go first and give his career some context in the aftermath of his retirement.
Back when we weren't ethical, Goes and I sponsored Jorge Masvidal when we were just Tag Radio, and then we moved to Junkie Radio and learned that it wasn't acceptable. Yeah, we do go way back. An exception was made. This was at the Playboy Mansion, so we kind of had to just get involved somehow. Anyway, Jorge Masvidal, look, he's done a lot in his career at lightweight, at welterweight. He never won a title except for the BMF title, which, by the way, was a pretty big event in itself. Shiny belt. He should be very proud of that. I think there's always been something to be said for the collection of gangsters and OGs and guys from the streets and who really is the BMF out there. So I thought it was appropriate that Diaz and Masvidal went out, settled it. He's got a nice shiny belt to show for it. But look, aside from that, the guy's got the fastest KO ever. An amazing highlight that will live on, any type of video montage the UFC ever produces. And he had an incredible 2019, one of the most incredible years that an athlete could have under the UFC umbrella, thus propelling him to being an actual pay-per-view superstar towards the end of his career, which was much deserved, because I think when Dana White in his mind thought, what do I want a fighter to be like? You want Jorge Masvidal, man, just some dude that just doesn't put up with anything, gets down, will fight across many divisions, and will do it, for a long time. This guy had an amazing career, and I think it's the right time for him to bow out. He was taking shots that he didn't used to take before because he would use his great boxing skills that he had, good head movement, or he'd make you pay for some of those. He looked a little bit slower. He said it himself. That 3 ain't dropping anymore. That rifle, that he's got, it's just not hitting his wide receivers. He used those comparisons in other sports. So for right now, he exits at the right time. Now, does that mean he's done with combat sports? Probably not. I think he's definitely marketable at bare knuckle or in the low-level celebrity boxing sport that we've created, I guess, with the Paul brothers. I think he could definitely go out there and make some more money. Plus, he's doing promotions. He's got the mezcal. So good time for him to bow out of MMA. MMA steals your soul, man. And to do it for 20 years, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, his longevity was remarkable, and the fact that he was able to have the resurgence he did in year 17 and go on that 2019 run where I believe he was the MMA Junkie Fighter of the Year that year, edging out Israel Adesanya. It was, a very special run for him. But Goes, obviously, you have some of the history with Masvidal as well. What did you just think of his decision to hang up the gloves in his hometown of Miami here? It was a pretty special moment for him, even though the fight didn't go his way.
Yeah, well, for starters, George, I think we made a lot of exceptions that night at the Playboy Mansion, but we won't get into that. I think it's interesting because Jorge has been fighting a lot longer than people realize, right? Like his jump to fame in the UFC, he's been around way before that, fighting in other organizations and even fighting in the UFC and not really getting that much publicity like he's been getting the last couple of years. I actually commend him on this situation, because it is kind of the back end of his career where he's been making the big bucks, right? He has a lot of fights against quality opponents where he wasn't making that much money. And the problem that we see in mixed martial arts today is a lot of these fighters wait until that moment, that bad knockout, or they can't remember somebody's name or something to make these type of decisions. For Jorge to make it now before that moment comes, I really commend him in doing that. And you can tell that competition no longer defines him anymore, right? Like George mentioned, the mezcal. He's on the cover of a UFC video game. If we were to do kind of like an NBA-esque logo, it would probably be Masvidal's flying knee, right? That would probably be it. So based off of everything that he's been able to accomplish and the moment, I think he made a good decision in retiring. I think people are going to say he did leave some money on the table because you can match him up with just about anyone, right? But the guy knows that he probably can't win a title, and I think he just doesn't want to go out the same way some of these other fighters have. So I commend Jorge for doing this.
Yeah, already 4 losses in a row, so it was probably the time. My personal opinion goes, I think if they were to do a Jerry West type logo, it's got to be Anderson Silva's front kick on Vitor Belfort rather than the flying knee. But that's a good option too. But Danny, to close it out to you, I mean, what do you think of Masvidal's retirement and his career? Did he overachieve? Did he underachieve based on what you thought he does? I mean, as we were watching some of the B-roll there put up by Ken Hathaway, our great producer, I feel like for years I watched Masvidal and was like, man, he's just not living up to his potential. Like, it was frustrating to watch him because you knew he was so much better than what he was putting out in the octagon in a lot of these fights, but he managed to turn it on late and have that run we talked about. What do you think? Do you think he did more with less or didn't do enough? What do you think of the career in hindsight now?
That's a very tough question. And I feel like you can make an argument either way. I remember way before 2019, that crazy year that he had, I remember telling people, like, why is Jorge Masvidal not a star? Like, why is he not as famous as Nate Diaz? Because he is a very exciting fighter. He's a striker. He's basically Nate Diaz, but instead of, the whole 209, he's 305. I mean, if he's like the most Miami guy person out there, I think the public really feels, the Miami public and crowd really feels identified with him in the sense of, the way how he talks, his story, his background, immigrant parents, being Hispanic, Latino. How is this guy not more famous than he is? And I think that's a question that I always wondered for a long time. I do feel like he underachieved in the sense that, and not on his fault, I feel like the promotion could have backed him way earlier into his career, and he could have been, again, a Nate Diaz-like figure with big fights, with a longer sort of superstar reign, because he only really became a superstar towards the end of his career since 2019. So, and then skill-wise, dude, we all knew how good he was, and there was so many fights, especially like he had a couple ones I'm trying to remember right now. I think it was back-to-back to Benson Henderson and Lorenz Larkin, fights that he lost by split decision. And I think there were others there too, where like a lot of people thought he won. He just wouldn't get the nod from the judges, but certainly he had a lot of bad luck there. So I guess you can make an argument for both. But certainly, he does have 17 losses on his record. But yeah, Jorge Masvidal, just a fantastic career. I'm glad that he's retiring. He's fought 52 professional times. He's rolled the dice 52 times. Leaves the MMA with money, health, fame, other business ventures. That is a career to envy. He might have not been a champion in mixed martial arts, but he is a champion in life. It's hard to walk away from this game with both money, health, success, fame, and business ventures outside of it. Usually one or several are missing, and that leads to poor retirements. But I think Jorge Masvidal played the game right, the best that he could, and here he is, a champion in life.
Yeah, agreed. And to your point there, greatest adventure in the comments says Masvidal used to be the king of split decision losses. And I think that kind of points to what I was saying there. You watched him for years there and was like, man, if he just did 5% more, he'd be winning these fights a lot more convincingly. But I mean, I wonder too, now that he is retired, where does this Leon Edwards fight rank in terms of like the greatest fights we never got that should have happened, all that stuff. But I want to go quickly around the horn since we're kind of behind on time here. Does anyone think one day Jorge Masvidal will get into the UFC Hall of Fame? We've talked about in recent weeks, the different criteria, all that stuff. Just give me a yes or a no. We'll start with George. Do you think he gets in?
Yes, I think he does. He's beaten some Hall of Famers or soon to be Hall of Famers. So that alone, the fastest KO, yes. Pay-per-view star, yes.
Danny?
Yeah, I think seeing Donald Cerrone get inducted, that kind of gives you an idea that you don't have to be a champion. And look, if we're talking about the most successful fighters without winning a belt, Masvidal has to be up there. So yeah.
Goes.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll play by your rules, Mike. You said
yes. No, you're good. I'm curious to see if he does. I think that BMF belt and the 5-second KO might be enough on its own, but we'll have to wait and see. And last thing on this topic too, just wanted to get your guys' quick thoughts, kind of as an aside. Gilbert Burns, after this fight, accused Masvidal of using lotion and more or less greasing, gave this whole big speech about how he did multiple showers to kind of get it into his skin so he was slippery in the cage. Does anyone, and whoever can jump in who maybe has the strongest thoughts, is this much ado about nothing, or do you look at the fight differently or Masvidal differently after these accusations?
No, because he really, there's no, I mean, look, you have to stand in front of on the prep point in front of a commission official who checks your nails, make sure that everything's good to go. They feel you, make sure about the lotion on the Vaseline on your face, and that anything's okay going in. He passed that test. Man, take your win, Burns. You fought great. Take your win. I don't see it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think if Burns would have lost or something, then I think, this definitely could have been a bigger deal. But look, Masvidal is walking away. He retired. Burns, you got the win. I mean, what is that going to change, right?
Yeah, nothing like a good old greasing accusation. It throws me back to the old school days of MMA. GSP, BJ Penn, let's go.